Constructing your life is about much more than just building a bank account. Each week, join real estate entrepreneur and mindset coach Austin Linney as he interviews guests who are constructing their dream lives and impacting the world around them on a daily basis. If you're an entrepreneur or wanting to start a business, or you just want to hear motivating stories of how others have overcome the odds, you are in the right place. And now for your host, Austin Linney.
Guys, welcome back to Construct Your Life podcast with Austin Linney. I'm beyond blessed to be here today. We've got a special guest, in the San Antonio world, really a rock star, a famous, he's always on the news every time I look up. And this guy's had a journey, and it's going to take turns that you didn't even know existed. And I would imagine when he went down this road, he didn't know they existed either. So today, guys, we've got Rick Martinez here. Happy to have you here, Rick.
Thanks, Austin. I really appreciate it, and what different times we're in, and what a perfect opportunity for us to get together on a Zoom call and talk about life and business.
This is great. We probably live about 5 miles from each other, but we're on Zoom call today. Known Rick for a while. Him and his wife are fantastic pillars in the community, really helping out everybody. So I'm going to go a quick bio on Rick, but really we're going to get into it. Rick was in the military. Served as a registered nurse as well. And then I was reading, I just found out too, your first business, is that right? Your first business, you built to $52 million in revenue and then exited. So maybe like you did it amazing at first, and then you were like, I'm just gonna stop here. So, and then your life took the craziest turn I've ever heard of. You're a cannabis. You got a cannabis podcast. You help companies get businesses started. You speak at cannabis events all around the world in the United States. Kind of walk us through that crazy journey from a business owner and a nurse to a cannabis CEO.
Sure. First of all, I appreciate the introduction. It's sometimes when I hear it, I think about the life my wife and I have had, and the ups and downs, and I realize that we're barely halfway through it. But I'll kind of give you like the 30,000 foot view, and then wherever you want to dive into a valley, just let me know. Sure. So I am a registered nurse. I've been a nurse since 1995. So as of this recording, that's 25 years. So I've been an RN for 25 years. But the reason why I decided to become an RN was because I flunked out of college first back in the 80s and promptly joined the military. I didn't have many options, and I didn't have a skill set. So I joined the Army and learned a lot. No regrets. So I was enlisted for several years in the late 80s, early 90s, and learned a lot. The biggest lessons I took were discipline and this kind of can-do mentality, and also the importance of team, of surrounding yourself with people who are, I hate to beat this phrase up, but on the same mission as you. And literally, it was true. So I realized, though, that the military wasn't going to be a career for me. So I got out, and my wife at the time was in medical school. So she's a physician, and I was inspired to want to be something more. And I was always very intrigued by the military field. The medical field, and especially nursing. So I became a nurse, long story short. Graduated in 95, and realized then at that time as well, while it's a great profession, I'm still a nurse today, I would be forever capped by the whole dollars and hours, trade-off. There was only a certain number of hours, a certain number of dollars I would be paid, and I just wanted more. So in the year 2000, we launched, I say we, because I was then divorced and dating my current wife, the wife you mentioned, Lisa. We were dating, and I launched a company from our apartment here in San Antonio, actually on the far north side, and simply put, it was a staffing firm. So fast forward, we grew that to well over 8 figures in revenue over the course of many, many years. So this is not anything overnight. It took years of a lot of toil and trouble and wins and losses. But take note of the time we started, 2000. 9/11 happened in 2001, obviously. And a few things transpired. One, we're actually living through very similar times as we record this. Tumultuous times where we just didn't know what was going to happen. turns out that it became a huge lever for our business. 9/11 and the rapid deployment of active duty and reserve troops, that was our industry, staffing military medicine facilities. So we grew. And at the same time, I felt called, Austin, and this is something that I don't necessarily share, but I went back into the Army. I was already fully out. I went back in, put my hand up. I was an ER trauma nurse, and with what was going on in Iraq and Afghanistan, mostly Iraq at the time, I wanted to be there, and went back into service. And our company, we had put measures in place that would continue to grow. Fast forward again, got out of the military, did a tour. I was promptly activated and served a tour, active duty tour, came back to Texas and started some CrossFit gyms. And that was the next phase of our entrepreneurial journey. We exited those gyms, closed those down several years ago, sold our company, MedTrust, about 5 years ago. And that's kind of where this story picks up, is I fell in love with mentoring and this pay it forward mentality, and started mentoring early stage startups, young startups, just really helping them get over the curve and or get through the curve, and liked it a lot. Joined some incubators, some accelerator programs, and then we launched our own accelerator program. But here's how the transition and where the green world enters my existence and the green rush collide head on. Was several years ago, probably about 4 years ago or 5 as of this recording, a friend of mine, he asked for help with this startup. And I'm like, whatever you need. He's a Marine, and I said, whatever you need, I'm in. That's what I like to do. And I said, who are you going to help? Or who do you want to help? And he said, I want to help veterans with PTS, not PTSD. Just word to the listeners, drop the D. Most veterans, all veterans, don't view it as a disorder. It's post-traumatic stress. And I said, who do you want to help? And he said, veterans with PTS. And I said, I'm in. Whatever you're going to do, I want to throw my hat in the ring. I said, how are you going to help them? And he said 3 letters that changed my life. He said CBD. Mm-hmm. And Austin, I was racking my brain thinking, okay, I was in the Army, he's in the Marines, CBD, combat battle deployment. Is it covert? So I was trying to think.
Is it a new CrossFit workout I'm not aware of? Yeah.
Is it CrossFit? Is it some sort of combat readiness thing? What is it? And I'm like, CBD. And I was talking to my friend, because he was halfway across the country, on Facebook Messenger. And I opened up a window and Googled CBD, and cannabis came up. And I'm like, that can't be right. It's like, no, it's got to be CrossFit or something combat related. And sure enough, it was CBD that we know. I had a moral dilemma. We can talk about that. I don't want to dive too deep into that. I had a real moral dilemma, but I already gave him my word, I'm in. And that began my journey into this whole industry, and which leads us to today. I've now been firmly entrenched in this industry as a speaker, mostly on ethical and responsible cannabis business practices. We did launch a podcast, and we're doing some cool things to this day. So that's the 30,000-foot overview of nurse to cannabis guy in Texas.
Yeah, and the podcast, guys, is called Weed to Know Basis. It's fantastic. He brings on great guys, just top-level information. And I would imagine, I love when you tell the story about when you sold your business and you grew this baby for so long, and you get to those heights revenue-wise, and I don't need to know numbers, but you're doing well for yourself once you exit, right?
Right.
I remember you saying to me that, you thought you were done, you thought you were kind of retired and you had built a business. Did the itch for the entrepreneurship just scratch too heavy? Because y'all are doing well for yourselves, but there's not 2 people I know that work harder than you and your wife. Y'all just love what you do.
Yeah, those are great points, Austin. And and I'll speak from personal experience, because every entrepreneur is wired different. And let me reframe that. Every entrepreneur is wired the same. We may expect or want different outcomes. So before we even launched that company, I would never, first of all, we launched it so that I could control my destiny, so to speak. I wanted more time with my kids who are now grown up. I wanted to ride my mountain bike more. I wanted more time with my girlfriend, Lisa, who's my wife now. Mm-hmm. I wanted to spend more time with my lab, my dog. That's it. And I wanted to do it on my terms. It was very selfish. And I want the entrepreneurs out there to understand that it's okay to be selfish. Yes, in the beginning, you're doing something for you and you want a better life. You should want a better life. But in the long game, you also want to make sure that what we're creating or building, and I didn't know this then, that what we're creating or building is for the greater good. And so it was very selfish. This is what I want. I want more me time. So that was the genesis of starting the business. It wasn't we saw a gap in the industry or, there was opportunity or whatever it is, the buzzwords now. I just wanted fucking more for me. That's it. Yeah. Wanted more. And I didn't want to, at that time I was making $12 an hour as an RN. And I have a chip on my shoulder. I'm like, I'm worth more. I was making more as a bartender. Mm-hmm. But to your point, as if you had said to me then that you were going to be, that Rick, the crystal ball says in about 7 or 8 years from today, you will be doing $1 million in gross revenue every week. I would have said, you're crazy. You're stoned. You're crazy. There's no way. I'm just a nurse. I'm from East LA. I'm Hispanic. Most entrepreneurs are younger than me. Today, I don't believe that today, but I'm telling you the mental story I would have told myself if somebody had said that. Mm-hmm. I'm like, no. I just want more time, a little bit more money, and some freedom. That's it. Mm-hmm. We ended up building that business to that size and scope. And even to this day, it blows my mind that we built that. We launched it from nothing. No investors, no seed money, none of that bullshit that entrepreneurs are so out there. Just hustle, drive, belief. But to your question is then I begin to think, well, there's a lot of other entrepreneurs out there and I know a lot now. And some of them, they sell their business or they exit and they do golf or they do the thing or they're, the things we see on Instagram. And there's a sexiness about it. But the truth is, Austin, after we had our exit and I literally got I very clearly remember the first check we got. We had an earnout and certain things. And I realized then that this can't be it. Like this, this is a napkin, but I held the check in my hand and I thought, is this what I worked for? It was a piece of paper. It had several zeros on it. And it was deflating. It was lonely. And I think I realized then that entrepreneurship isn't a one and done thing. It's something that's part of our DNA. Look at Warren Buffett. That guy is in his 80s? Mm-hmm. He's still driving. Look at some of the most prolific entrepreneurs. They don't retire. They don't just ride off into the sunset. I believe the true entrepreneur, this is what we're destined to do until the day we die. And if we stop, it's because we're dead. And so you're right. We still work hard. It's a different kind of hard. It is. But we're still working hard. And I would just share that I believe that we have a different DNA strand, entrepreneurs, in us. Nobody else has it. Nobody gets it. And it's what we do forever. We always will.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And we'll dive into that in a little bit. But what I want to dig down on is when you're just a nurse and you're making $12 an hour and you're starting this business, there's no part about you that thinks that you're going to be CEO of a $52 million revenue company, right? So the question, what were the limiting beliefs that you were maybe circling around? But more importantly, was it as simple as just building the plane, as my mentor would say, building the plane while you're flying? Like the person that you needed to become to be that CEO of that massive company, obviously when you started, you weren't that person yet.
No, those are great questions, and I'm not a believer in the whole jump and build your wings. I don't believe it. The wings have already been built before us. It's a matter of finding the person who's built them and then get them to get, I don't believe a lot of those memes and Facebook quotes we see, but limiting beliefs, I love it. And I was always raised with the mindset and the mentality of anything is possible, anything. My parents instilled that in us. My whole family's that way. We were raised to believe that you don't stop, you don't quit. You just, if you're breathing, you can continue moving forward. And But it's interesting because you're right. When I share the story, I would never have envisioned it. I think as I reflect back, Austin, and Tony Robbins said this, success leaves clues. Mm-hmm. As I reflect back and think about the steps and the things, when I was, and I'm going to use your words, when I was just a nurse, and I want people to listen to that, because maybe you're out there listening and you're just a teacher, or you're just a waiter, or you're just a bartender. Fuck that. And here's why. So you're right. I was just a nurse, but when I think about being a nurse, I was a critical care trauma nurse. There were people laying down in front of me whose life depended on me. I was already doing things that were bigger than me. And as I reflect back, I think, and I'm telling you and the listeners, you're doing something as well. And don't minimize what it is you do or the job you have or the craft or trade. Don't minimize that, because that's a limiting belief. But here I was taking care of people on their worst days, and oftentimes saving lives. Not always. Sometimes they didn't make it. But the fact is, I was already doing great things. All I had to do was figure out how to do the great things and apply the great thing mentality into other things. And it just happened to be entrepreneurship, where I was just lit up. I was just fired up. We've heard the stories of, I'm not really good at pulling sports heroes, but the former Rams quarterback who was a stalker at a grocery store.
Kurt Warner.
I picture his face, and he became a Super Bowl champion. He became
twice.
Yeah.
With different teams.
Yes. And so for the folks out there who think, well, Rick's a nurse, he's got a degree and he already has training. Kurt Warner was stocking shelves and became a Super Bowl champion. And all that to say is that limiting beliefs only, and this, Austin, exist only here between our ears. That's the only place they exist. And that's where the battle begins and ends, between your very own ears. So
1,000%.
Just a nurse. I love that. I'm gonna have to post that.
You have to get a shirt.
I wrote it down.
And so, where I want to take it, and you can tell me no if you want. But I'm a pretty open guy, and we know each other pretty well. And my wife's struggled many years with anxiety, heavy anxiety, and it's still a battle every day. It's something that I signed up for. I married her, and we're in this together. And the years after meeting y'all, a couple of techniques have definitely helped. And you can share it, or if you don't feel like going down that road. But I thought the steps that you've taken, which really surprised me, when you were, you did all these great things. You built the company and all these things, and then all of a sudden you're living out in the suburbs. And your life starts changing a little bit before you moved to a high rise downtown. If you want to share kind of what took place, or we don't have to go there if you don't want.
No, I don't mind. And I think these are. I'm glad you're not afraid to ask, Austin, and I have no problem sharing. And I think one of the phrases I'll share is that all that glitters is not gold. My wife and I still work hard, and yes, we've done some things, but just like life is that roller coaster, or just like roller coaster is life. We have highs and we have lows, and as we record this, the entire world is living through a low. Everybody, we are in a low, and whether we like it or not, whether we accept it or not, we're in a crisis mode right now through this COVID-19 stuff, but. We did have an exit, and we did receive some wealth that I would never have envisioned. And we were able to reinvest that in startups and do some really cool things and get into angel groups. And again, doors open that I never even knew were there. Like I never even knew as I walked down the corridor of life that these doors existed. But they do exist. And we made some choices. We did have a house in the far north side in the suburbs, and our kids are now grown up. And we decided several years ago, actually this summer of 2020 will be 3 years living downtown, that we wanted to begin the next phase of life. I mean, we're still relatively young and vibrant. And a lot of things drove that decision. One was we're empty nesters. Two was, the entrepreneur is what's next. And three was we're empty nesters. on the entrepreneur what's next, and how do we place ourselves in the best possible position to discover, unpack, or figure out what's next, but in the epicenter of a very vibrant, growing city. And again, for the listeners, take those three things and apply them to you. It doesn't have to be you sell your house and move downtown. It could be whatever, go part-time, get a side gig, and join an incubator, whatever those things are. But in that time frame was a lot of turbulence. I mean, significant. It wasn't easy. That's where I truly discovered the wellness power of CBD, because I too had a significant anxiety attack. I was very close to a breakdown. Like, I went to the hospital, to an ER by ambulance. And my wife and I are both trained ER nurses. And a whole different story, which I've shared and written about, but it was years and years, not that long ago, maybe 5 years ago, that I thought I was having this significant heart attack, which turned into severe panic attack, which I'm like, I'm not buying it. I don't have anxiety. And it was because there was a lot of things going on in life. My daughter was getting married. Our kids were grown up and moving out. My wife and I were looking towards what's next in life. We had a business go bad. We had a lot of things happen. And it just like we're living today, Austin, it all converged at one time. Mm-hmm. So moving downtown was almost a salvation move for us. It was. It was fun. It felt right. After moving here, we realized, why did we wait so long? But there was a lot of elements that went into Rick and Lisa selling the house and moving into downtown. A lot of things happened in between, not all good.
Yeah. Well, and if one listener gets an impact from that, super successful business owner, great family, all those things, and anxiety, the road that you walk down, it ain't straight. And, what I respect about you and Lisa is the amount of value that you give to people, and you share those stories. So by sharing those stories, you're not empowering it on you anymore. And by not empowering it anymore, you can proceed to give impact to other people. And I think that's where, that's exciting to me on so many levels.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question, because it's, I think a lot of times, and I'll speak just me personally, when I look to my mentors or people I look up to, we want to read the book about the shiny object, about the success and the wins. And there's nothing wrong with that. But oftentimes we learn our biggest lessons from when they were at their lowest points, when they were down, when they were either beat down, fell down, or were kicked down. And I think that's what makes people like us different, Austin, is the difference is we're all going to be down. You are, period. It's going to happen. The difference is, will you choose to stay down? And people like us don't. We're just like, all right, I'm dirty. I got it. I'm bleeding. I lost a tooth, whatever it is, but you better fucking take me out, because I'm standing back up.
That's right. 100%. And I think to get the most value out of the podcast, I think it would be exciting, because, my show is geared toward entrepreneurs and people that are building business, investors, so on and so on. You've coached a lot of investors. You've incubated coaching calls, so many items. What do you think, if you had to nail down a couple tips, let's say people thinking of going out on their own, people thinking about starting a business, maybe they are just a nurse per se, as we're saying right now, but they have a business idea. And what I truly believe is that when you step back from what we're dealing with as we sit right here, I believe that more businesses and more passions will be created out of this next 90 days than you've ever seen in history. Because this world, technology-wise, access is unstoppable right now. So you can choose to learn from people like Rick and create those businesses you've always dreamed of, or you can choose to be a victim. So on my show, we're going to talk about how you can use this as an advantage. And I'm defining this right now as separation season. This is where you separate from the pack.
That's a great way to think about this. And that is, crisis is I'll quote a phrase. It's from the Game of Thrones. And people talk about Netflix and how it's a waste of time, but there's a tremendous amount of lessons from movies. And there's a quote from the Game of Thrones, And I know the characters' faces, but I don't remember their names. And there was a scene where the bad guy is talking to the worst guy. And one of them says, we're about, this is crazy. This is chaos. It's chaotic. It's nuts. And he says, basically talking about how chaos or turbulence, they use the word chaos, or crisis, insert the word of the day, is going to keep people down. And the bad guy who's trying to become the bad guy, the leader of the bad guy, said, chaos is not a pit, because the other guy said chaos, we're in the pit of chaos. And he says, chaos, my friend, is not the pit. He says, chaos is the ladder. And I'll never forget that, because most people, just to your point, Austin, is we have the choice. We can believe it is the pit, or we can believe that it's the ladder. And I believe it's the latter. And you're right. I'm also of the mindset that some fantastic things, ideas, startups, whatever, are going to come out of this crisis. But I think to your point is you asked for some advice, and I like to pull from things I've read or experienced and kind of morph them in. Is passion isn't enough. It's just not. I'm passionate about donuts, but I'm just going to tell you, I will be a very bad donut store owner. It's not just eating the profits. It's the fact that I don't know how to bake. I don't know much about really retail operations, but I freaking love donuts. I do. And I love beer. Yeah. So passion's not enough. Passion's an ingredient. Yeah. It's an ingredient. There's two other ingredients which are critical. It's, can you make money at it? I mean, think about it. Mm-hmm. An entrepreneur, we're about making money. We are.
Dude, I want to stick here for a minute, because I truly believe, first of all, the guys that were faking it are getting called out right now with the economy getting ripped and roared. But second of all, this is very true. I've started many businesses, and at the end of the day, we weren't profitable. And guess what? It doesn't matter how many units you have, how many properties you're managing. And I don't think people focus enough on the mechanism to make money inside their business. Don't you see that all the time?
Yeah. We believe, and this is a fallacy, that passion, there's even the memes of follow your dreams and go work a day in your life. I'm like, fuck that. I'm like, no, don't do that. No, that's the meme of somebody who crashed and burned because somebody else posted the meme of follow your dream and you'll live, never work. No, following your dream and passion, that's an ingredient. It's like trying to make bread with just yeast or whatever. The other ingredients are money. You have to be, can you make money doing it? And don't be, entrepreneurs shouldn't be ashamed to talk about that. That's why we do it. It's very selfish, but it's also because we know it's for the greater good. It has to have both those mechanisms for us and to serve the greater good. But the third thing is, can you be best in the world at it? It's called the hedgehog concept. And that was from the book, Good to Great. And I'm a believer in it. Passion, can you be number one, the best in the world? If you can't be best in the world, don't bother, because you're going to get steamrolled by people who are going to steamroll you.
100%.
And can you make money? Mm-hmm. When I realized we had started a nurse staffing company, ironically, as I reflect back, those three items were things that I intuitively believed. We could be the best in the world, and we could make money at it. And I am passionate about providing care for people who are at their best and worst. And if I had just been, can I provide care for people at their best and worst, I would, and please don't take this the wrong way to my fellow practitioners, I would still be an hourly wage earner. But it's got to have those three ingredients. And I guess one of the iterations I want to make is for entrepreneurs to never be ashamed about talking about money. I get it. We want to have those first conversations and say, so why are you doing this? Austin or Jim or Sally, whatever. And he's like, well, I want to help people. I'm like, okay, I get it. Or why are you doing this, Bob? And they're like, well, I want to give back to humanity. I'm like, I get it. But really, why are you doing this? Because this is going to be one fucked up journey. It's going to be messed up. If you want to help people and give back, join the priesthood, go, join the Peace Corps, Doctors Without Borders, and be somebody who carts backpacks, something where you can give your time. But entrepreneurship is no joke. And there's got to be a deeper set, something that drives us. And I believe it's got to have an anchor in how much we want to make. It does.
So I have a rule. It's been a rule that I've cultivated in the last year or two. And I love, and when I mean love, I love to go in business with two types of people from two different sets of walls. I'm obsessed with going into business with anybody in the military because there's a greater calling in them, and there's a focus and leadership tactics that are taught and that I believe are beneficial out in the business world. The second one are people that have gone through and are thriving out of recovery. And the reason I am so inspired by these people that have created businesses is when you've gone down that far and that low and your life's been ripped apart and you come back up, there is nobody that will outwork you ever, because their needs and their drive are so far greater. There's a guy out in California who I'm going to interview soon. He had a problem. He was in and out of prison for a while, and he became a stocker at a grocery store and started seeing how the vendors were interacting with the store. So he became friends with all the vendors. Okay. Then was like, well, hey, I can do this. And so he bought a truck and started a distribution company. Fast forward to 2 years later, that company does $7 million a year.
Damn.
And he was stocking groceries 2.5 years before that. And that guy is working right now, because I talked to him. He's working 16 hours a day right now, trying to keep grocery stores full, obviously what we're dealing with. But this is not what you see on Instagram, guys. This is not Lambos and Ferraris. I know Rick. I will follow his Instagram. They'll be working till like 10, 11 at night all the time. Am I wrong, or am I not wrong?
No, as we're talking, Austin, my wife is in the next room, has been on her phone since 9:00 this morning.
And y'all could easily say, you know what? We got money in the bank. Let's not do this. We've worked our whole life. But what you're saying is one of the greatest quotes I ever, and it's probably not it's pretty terrible when you think about it, but I just use it as a reference point. They asked a very successful entrepreneur, what's the finish line for you? When will you relax? And he told him a coffin.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I've been to Costa Rica. I've been to the beach, and I can last about 2 days.
Yeah.
There is something inherently, I love employing people. I think having employees and being able to provide for them and know that you're the CEO or you're the owner of the business, there's something that feels really good about that.
There is. And it's something that also scares a lot of people. Mm-hmm. Like to know, let's call a spade a spade. When you're the owner or the director or the founder or the CEO, there's a lot of people who are relying on you. Your decisions, on your clarity, on your thoughtfulness, on your vision. And for some people, that's where I want to play. For other people, it's like hell to the no. I don't want to be the one responsible for somebody putting food on their table or not based on my decisions. And it's a scary thing. It's also a quality that I think a lot of leaders and entrepreneurs have. Yeah.
Agreed. So where we're going to go here now is we're going to talk about you're a dad, you're a husband, you have kids, okay? And I would say that cannabis is definitely in the mainstream way heavier than it was, in the 90s and even in the 2000s. It's a lot more accepted. Businesses are sprouting everywhere. But when you don a weed, cannabis podcast, CBD podcast, and you're speaking out in the local news, there has to be a level of pushback and negativity in the community. I would imagine that it's not the easiest route to navigate, I would imagine, at times.
It's not. And, we can remove the word cannabis and insert whatever the hot counterculture industry was 10 years ago. That was CrossFit. Or remove that and go to the dawn of the internet, where it was misunderstood and crazy, or even video games where we chastise children. But You're right. And it wasn't an easy transition. In fact, I remained in the cannabis closet for years. I didn't tell anybody. It was, I like to say that, and I use that term, cannabis closet, because we were involved in the industry, mostly on the CBD side, because we live in Texas, where it's where marijuana, medical or otherwise, is illegal. Very easily obtainable, but it's illegal. And we were working with companies, and I never told anybody. We were, and I'll be open about this. We had started a pretty large organization. We worked with people all over the world, and there was a reputational thing at stake, if I'm being very honest. Mm-hmm. And weed wasn't accepted. It was still it was taboo. And this was just a few years ago. We've come a long way. So I was in the cannabis closet, and there was literally an Instagram post that we did for fun about 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, that it was just for fun, didn't even think about it, that caused a lot of firestorms. Friends unfriended us in real life. And all it was me with the dope hat, the magazine, and a lunchbox that had Cheech and Chong on it. And I did a picture. I was wearing a tank top just like this by the pool. Mm-hmm. And it was in this building. So it was 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. And it was a firestorm. And people who I know very well made comments. And I thought, holy geez, I didn't know people felt so strong. And I got angry. And I got a little, my initial emotions were anger, some frustration, and what the hell? These are people who I'd known for years, their families, had dinner with them. And I was going to react on social media, which is a powerful tool. But before I could, Austin, friends who saw the post started posting, not on my behalf, but really on behalf of the industry. And it made me realize there's a lot of people out there who are, let's just say, into this industry more than I ever imagined. Mm-hmm. And I realized that almost like there's an army of people. And I had to come out of the closet, so to speak. I had to come out of the cannabis closet and draw the line. And that meant suddenly my kids were fully aware. It was no longer, what's dad doing? It was no longer, why is he doing that show? It was just done. I am now in this industry, lock, stock, and barrel. And it wasn't easy. I wouldn't say let's just charge into that, into the battle, because I still wondered what's going to be the repercussions or the blowback, or, who knows? And surprisingly enough, while we did take some flack and lost friends, what we gained through friendships, through camaraderie, through just becoming known in a very new industry, far outweighed that. And I would say to anybody, you can apply that story to just business in general, because as an entrepreneur, if you have a steady job and you do well, maybe you have a wife or a kid, people are going to chastise you for being a nut for wanting to start something. It just so happened that's really what we were doing. It just happened to be in a very counterculture industry. But the truth is, Austin, we lived through that in the CrossFit days. In the CrossFit days, we were chastised because, Rick, you already have a good business. You have your staffing firm. Why do you want to do that? People are getting hurt. The doctor won't let me go to it. You don't understand it. And the same arguments for cannabis. So success always leaves clues. We had already been through that turbulence once. And but my kids, interesting, because they're now 27, 25, and 22. I would dollars to donuts. Our youngest one was already partaking in in weed. My oldest are two girls. One of them's a teacher now, and one of them works for an international nutrition company. And I did wonder, what are they going to think? What are they going to say? Are they going to look at me with a strange eye, like, is my dad a stoner? And I wasn't sure at all. Turns out, just like anything, for anybody who has kids out there, when you tell a kid no, the first thing they do is do it. Mm-hmm. Suddenly, by virtue of maybe me and intern Lisa being in this industry, the answer wasn't no. It didn't seem as, what's the word? Like they had to hide it as much. Yeah. In fact, with my oldest daughter, now we have conversations about CBD. We've had conversations about, some, when she's going through things, she goes, Dad, will CBD help? And she goes to a CBD store in Austin, Texas, and buys some, and it works. And never would I have imagined I'd be talking to my children about cannabis consumption. And it was scary. But again, it goes back to what we're talking about, Austin. We have the choice. Hunker down, let it blow over, and
Sure.
come out and see what's left, or just address it. And we addressed it.
And I think that's amazing, because I know a lot of people in your position, if they would have been getting unfriended, or people talking negative, there is a inherent quality that a lot of people would just cave into that pressure and say, let me stay into the norm. But you chosen to rise above it, and understood that, if they didn't see eye to eye to you, but that's okay. And maybe, the hope is that they'll come around eventually, but I can't sit here and live my life off of what you think about me. It doesn't work that way, because then you're never going to be happy.
Yeah, exactly. We're tuned to march to the beat of our own drum. And there was just no way, and again, it took a bit, but there was no way I was going to allow somebody to dictate what I drummed. And that's really what it boiled down to, is that if I really am who I am, and this is what I want to do, and I'm doing it for good reasons. I'm not doing it to start selling meat on the black market. I'm not going to, hire mules and run drugs across the border. This was an emerging industry. It was on the nascent, kind of on the very early hockey stick rise of just people knowing what it is, and, the industry in general. But I thought, I have to be true to what I know is true and right. And then of course it was that post. That was just the straw. That was it. And I'm like, all right, now I have every reason to just fling that door open.
Yeah. And I think if that wasn't the case, when you posted at one of the last conventions you went to with a garbage bag full of weed, I think that was the official.
Yeah. Yeah.
But and this is the question that's always talked about, and my coach and me talk about this on a daily basis. I see your wife, and y'all have margaritas, and you're out with friends, and you're walking farmers market, you're working out, all those things. And I would venture to guess that y'all probably put in, 50 to 75 hours a week. Do you believe, this is the argument I get with everybody, do you believe that business and life are separate? Or do you believe that if you're loving what you do, it's basically intertwined, right? And it's the same way I look at real estate when I'm on vacation, because I love it, right? So that's the argument. Well, it needs to be separate, and all this stuff. But I think it's one and the same.
Yeah, there's no question for me. Work-life balance for an entrepreneur does not exist. It's work is life, life is work. And and there's plenty of phrases and memes about this, but and I think Gary Vee is really poignant about it, but if you're looking forward to Fridays, your shit is broken. And so no, I don't believe in work-life balance. I don't believe there's a separation. And if one is looking for that, then entrepreneurship is not for you, because you will look at your business as your baby, whether that's good or bad. You will. It will be something very personal to you, good or bad. It will be something you want to nurture. And that's like saying, I'm only a dad when I'm at home. It doesn't work that way. You're always a dad. I'm always an entrepreneur. We do, and I'm using air quotes, we do work a lot, but it's on our terms. Right now, even this, Austin, I'm going to use this podcast as part of our marketing and media. Mm-hmm. We're going to chop this up and use some of the, quotes and some of the stuff that we're talking about, and use it to transmit our message, and yours as well. And so while this might seem like fun, while he's just on a podcast talking, no, I'm writing the notes down as we're talking. Yeah. I'm thinking about the questions you're asking me. I'm thinking about all these things and how we can translate that into helping others. But short answer is work-life balance for entrepreneurs, no such thing.
And I agree. And this is something I want to go with you, and I'm interested to hear your comments. I just started my interviews for my podcast on Monday. I've already knocked out like 9 this, 7 or 8 this week. Yeah. And, I do want to impact people. Obviously I want, my goal in life is to provide value at every opportunity. If I can help people with the curve, and get them ahead, younger guys, I love coaching people, all those things. But I have gained so much in this week from my conversations on these podcasts and learned so much about myself and, business ideas and everything. So there is something inherently great about the access to, these people. I'm asking you, like, you started a podcast on a whim and it's going great and you're having a good time. What are the joys from it that you maybe didn't think about when you started it and you kind of just started it? And what are the benefits that you've seen from starting that podcast?
Interesting. I think the first thing that came to mind is the friendships I've made, because we've invited some folks on who are, let's call them real influencers on the marijuana side. We're now friends. Like, I can text them, and it's something I never would have envisioned. But now that I'm in the industry, it's very cool to know that there are other people out there who maybe live a little bit more to the left than I do, but I can call them friends. That's the first thing. The second thing is, frankly, and this is me speaking, is I love the spotlight. I do. When we had our company, MedTrust, we hired a CEO when I was activated by the military. And part of my job, in fact, a large majority of my job, forget the title CEO, was I was always the front guy. Whenever we went to conventions or things like that, I was always there. It was because we have to use our gifts and our strengths. And mine, it's not in sitting in an office, making calls or talking to contracting officers. That's my wife's doing that right now. She works for a federal firm. So she deals with the federal government. She's great at that. She loves it. My gift was going face to face with the general. And I mean face to face, like with meetings. My gift was going to Washington, D.C. and sitting down with a group of contractors and maybe talking through the next big thing. So that being said, I always knew that. So podcasting for me was a natural thing, which why speaking for me is a natural thing. And it helps me not only cascade and transmit the message that we have to share, but because of who I am, people gravitate toward it. For the listeners, don't take this the wrong way, but I also believe you can't be shy, is people gravitate to us. I believe it's because the message, the timing, the person, the face, everything is all at the right time, the right place. But the friends, and the fact is, I like doing it. Whether it's recorded live or being a guest on a show or recording just an audio podcast, I just love it.
And guys, when you're building a business and come from a guy that's failed and succeed and all that stuff, the biggest lesson I ever learned in business was self-awareness. And when you are self-aware on your strengths, meaning that I am a massive seeker of talent, and I'm like Rick, I am a front guy. I do not need to have my hands on any spreadsheets. I can't. It's not me. But my business partner loves it. And when I mean loves it, like loves it. And that's why we work together great. So if you're partnering with people, I do think that the society that we're moving into with podcast and video and all those things, if you're in business, even if it's an internal podcast for your company, I believe that you have to have an open dialogue conversation moving forward to not only document, but also express ideas within the company. It's just the thing. I think you have to.
Yeah, got to play to your strengths. And if you don't, I'm just like you. I hate spreadsheets and that whole part of the business. And interesting thing is that years and years ago, I took some online college courses to get better at it. Better at spreadsheets and financials and understanding and putting all those stuff together. And man, I dove into it. And I was up at night doing courses and sending them into professors and just little courses, not for a degree. And I got, for the listeners who are there, if I'm using inches, if I was at 2 inches, I got to 4. Whereas, in other words, my weakness, I went from 2 to 4. Mm-hmm. And when I realized where my strengths and gifts were, and you all have that, and put that same effort, I went from 2 inches to 27. It was exponential growth when I put that same energy and effort to a talent and a gift I already knew I had. In other words, there's something you're really, really good at. Double down on it. And outsource or find the person or the people or the team or the company, whatever it is, the VA, I don't mean veteran, I mean like a virtual assistant who can take the thing that you're weakest at, and they're the ones who will take it from 2 to 27. And it was a hard lesson, but a lesson I learned.
Guys, that was it. That was the rewind spot right there. And that's the clip that we'll play over and over again, because it's the truth. The reason I failed, and I'll be 100% transparent right now, I lost $20,000 last year, maybe a little more. The first time I lost money in business, really butthurt about it, that whole thing, victim role for 2 days, whatever. I was ultimately, if I have to take credit for it, I was lying to myself about the parts of the business that I was running that I thought I needed to be, and I was extremely weak at. And so what that was doing was pushing against who I was. So I'm trying to fake it every day. And it was literally like walking through sand with 20-pound weights on my leg. And now that I'm in a position where I'm elevated into the role that suits me, I feel like I'm soaring through the skies with no weight. It's as simple as that.
That's it.
I can't even put it into words, the amount of change when all they do is say, Austin, we're going to wind you up and you go network. And I'm like, this is awesome. Yes. Yeah. Like I can go do this all day long, and I seek it, right? You seek it, like you're meeting people and you want to do that and you want to go to events. And, something that you told me that I've always stuck with, and I thought it was one of the great things you told me, is you said, a lot of people go to events just to go to events and understand what might happen. Kind of explain to them your last little point here about you set an agenda before you go to a convention or a meeting of things that you want to happen. So you're walking into a place with 10,000 people with a plan, right?
Yeah. And, and I'll give it real time. So yeah, anything we do as entrepreneurs, there should be some sort of structure or goal setting. I believe that. Not everything. If you're going to get a hot dog, go get a hot dog. Take that with a grain of salt and use it accordingly. But I'll give you an example. So right now we're all in this quarantine, so events are canceled. But one of the last big events I went to was in Vegas, a cannabis convention, marijuana side. Actually, it was CBD. And as you all know, CBD is an explosive industry. And just, again, for folks who aren't in this industry, insert your industry here. Pet supplies, fertilizer, bottled water, whatever it is, you likely have some big convention or series of them somewhere. What I try to do is a few things. One, I want to get a real-time view of what's going on in the industry. And take that also with a little bit of grain of salt, because remember, the companies that are there, when they are there and they set up their booth or their marketing material, that has been printed out or designed maybe weeks or months prior. So arguably, one can say they're a little bit behind the curve. So I want to know what they were thinking months ago, because I may be talking about something happening right now. There could be a gap there. So one of the things I did at the last convention was I walked around. And it was a big one, hundreds upon hundreds of CBD vendors. And here's some of the lessons I learned. Now, remember, I'm looking at this from a marketing perspective, from how to help somebody differentiate themselves. So I have a very unique lens when I'm there. And so for the people listening, you don't use my lens per se, but use what I'm sharing with you and apply your lens. I look for marketing messaging. I look for the companies that stand out. I look for the leaders who are doing something more. And 9 out of 10 of those booths, I'm looking just at booths, had essentially the same message. Organically grown, non-GMO, backed by Dr. Smorgasborg, and insert doctor's name. And the same 9 out of 10 I would go by, and nobody would ever approach me. They would never walk out, and they would never act like they were there to conduct business. They acted like they were there to have fun at the after party or smoke a big blunt afterwards. Think about that, because when you insert your business or convention, that's your competition. But also think about this. How is your company acting when you're not there? And that's really one of the big messages I took, because a lot of times the owners aren't there. They send their team or the people. And I'm like, fuck, 1 out of 10 of these companies actually acts like they want your business. I'll use this example, and if I ever appear to you, Austin, with a big black eye, you'll know why. Because I took pictures. Mike Tyson just announced his big launch in Tyson Ranch or something like that, and it's marijuana and CBD. And here we are in day 2 of this full-blown convention. The Tyson booth is empty. There's nobody there. And halfway through, actually, the end of day 1, nobody's there. The beginning of day 2, I walk around, and there's a bunch of people scrambling, bringing boxes in. And I thought, is that how this cat wants to run his business? They're a day late. He's a known person. And what I do is I take a lot of photos, not to chastise people, but because these are lessons that can't be forgotten. So all that to say is there's a lot of things one can do at a convention. Yeah, sure, you can go waste your money and your time and go have fun. Nothing wrong with that. If that's the kind of business owner you want to be, I wouldn't do business with you. But I want to have a structure. I want to know that I'm going there for a set of specific reasons. I want to see what the modern marketing message looks like. I want to see what people are saying to the general public. I want to meet the other speakers, and I'll connect with them prior. And maybe it's just to shake their hand. Maybe it's to actually grab a beer. But I want to make sure that I have sets of metrics and reach certain goals. It doesn't have to be monetary, just that I'm there with a reason. And I'll tell you the truth, and one of the real reasons why I do that. Because my boss wants to know that when I'm going to these conventions, I'm kicking ass and taking names, and my boss is my wife, and she's in the next room.
That's right.
If you're going to go to this convention, what's the reason why? Because I don't want you going and just drinking beer and hanging out at the pool and all that, you know. And so the truth behind that is that we all have a boss, even if it's ourselves. So set some metrics and goals.
I love that. That's amazing. And, you know, I think people in business sometimes think that they can show up a certain way, and just because they have a name or something, you know, I saw something on Facebook today, guy I really respect. He said, you know what I love about this virus right now? I love that nurses, truck drivers, teachers are getting the credit they finally deserve, and people are realizing how big they are and how the social media stars don't mean shit. And he said it like right there. And he was like, if you want to understand America, understand these people have been taking care of you for a long time. It's just now that you're seeing the value, the worth, right? You know, I think that's what that. So if you want to have a silver lining in this whole mess, that's what I'm taking away is one of the things. How can the listeners, and we're going to drop all that in the show notes too, but how can they listen to you? How can they find you? You're everywhere on social media, but how do they get a hold of you?
I think the easiest one, just to put it one simple, is my personal Instagram. That's Planet Boy. It's one word, not plant, but planet, like Mars, at Planet Boy. Or they can go to our Instagram for the show. It's at Weed to No Basis. Just one long word, no hyphens, no dots. Planet Boy or Weed to No Basis. And that's probably the easiest way. That's where we live and breathe for the most part.
I thank you so much, Rick. You're super busy. You know, it's always a pleasure to speak to you. I always have a great time. I love that show. The show's it's gonna be great, and thank you so much for your time.
Perfect, Austin. Thanks so much, homie, and take it easy.
You got it, my man.
Thank you for listening to Construct Your Life with Austin Linney. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and pay it forward by sharing with a friend. Most importantly, take this opportunity to start constructing your life by taking immediate action on what you learned. For show notes, resources, and more information on one-on-one coaching with Austin, visit constructyourlifepodcast.com.